For 500 years, Europe had a mystery it couldn't solve. Where did the Roma come from? Nobody knew. They appeared in the Middle Ages, spread across the continent, spoke a language no one could place. Europe guessed Egypt, which is exactly where the word gypsy comes from. It was wrong. The answer wasn't in any history book. It was hiding in their grammar. In the 1700s, a Hungarian student named István Vali met Indian scholars at a Dutch university. He listened to them talk and froze. He knew those words. Pani, pani, knock, knock, water, nose, the number 3, one after another, Romani lined up with Hindi and Punjabi. Not borrowed, inherited. A language had walked out of northern India 1,000 years ago, crossed an entire continent on foot, and after all that distance, all those centuries, all those borders, it still remembered home. Welcome to the Airlearn Language Show. Today, we're going to trace that walk because the Romani language is, mile by mile, one of the most remarkable migration stories ever told. And it's a story where the words themselves are the evidence. If this video sends you down a rabbit hole in the Indo-European family, which it should, Airlearn is built for exactly this. Real language in context, tested so it sticks. 30+ languages, links in the description. Now, let's start in India. The first question is, why did they leave? The honest answer is, we don't know for certain. Historical records from the departure are thin. What we have is linguistic evidence, and that evidence points clearly to northwestern India, the region that is today Rajasthan, Punjab, and the Sindh. The Romani language shares core vocabulary and grammar with Hindi, Punjabi, and especially the Rajasthani language cluster. We're talking about the deepest layer of a language, not the borrowings, not the loanwords, the grammar. Romani has the same case system as Sanskrit-descended languages, the same verb conjugation logic, the same structure underneath. When you compare water, pani in Romani, pani in Hindi, or nose, nak in Romani, nak in Hindi, or hand, vast in Romani, hat in Hindi, you're not looking at borrowing. You're looking at the same branch of the same tree. The leading theory among linguists today is that the ancestors of the Roma were likely a group, or several groups, connected to military or artisan communities who began moving westward sometime around the 9th or 10th century CE, possibly pushed by the Ghaznavid invasions of northwestern India, possibly moving as service communities alongside armies. The historical record doesn't give us a clean answer, but the language does. It says, we started here. Here's the thing that makes Romani extraordinary as a linguistic artifact. Every major stop on the migration route left its mark in the vocabulary. The loan words don't just show what the Roma borrowed. They show, in rough sequence, where they went and how long they stayed. The language is a GPS trail, recorded in real time over 1,000 years. Persian. After leaving India, the migration moved through Persia, modern-day Iran. Persian loanwords in Romani cover practical vocabulary of daily life. Bav, oven, from Persian, bava. Zor, strength, from Persian, zor. These aren't abstract concepts. They're the words you pick up when you're actually living somewhere, dealing with people, working, trading. Armenian. From Persia, the route moved north and west into the Armenian highlands. Armenian loanwords in Romani are significant enough that some linguists once thought that Romani had Armenian origins entirely. Both gets refined. Words for tools, metalworking, and trade enter the language. The Roma appear to have spent real time in the Armenian-speaking world, not just passing through. Byzantine Greek. This is where the trail gets dense. The single largest non-Indian source of loanwords in Romani is Greek, specifically Byzantine Greek, the Greek of Eastern Roman Empire. And the quantity tells you something. This wasn't a brief stop. The Roma appear to have spent centuries in the Byzantine territory, what is today Turkey, the Balkans, Greece. Byzantine Greek words entered Romani in hundreds. Words for everyday objects, commerce, religion, social life. Drom, road, from Greek dromos. Foro, town, from Greek foros. The Greek layer in Romani is so thick that for a long time European scholars assumed Romani was a Greek dialect. But it isn't. But it lived inside Greek-speaking civilization long enough that Greek became its second skin. The Romani language is an autobiography. Every layer of loanwords is a chapter. India wrote the opening. Persian, Armenian, and Byzantine wrote the middle. Europe wrote the rest. In dozens of different languages as the Roma spread across the continent from the 14th century onward. The Roma began appearing in the historical record of Europe in the 14th century. Byzantine records mention them in Greece in the 1300s. German records place them in the Holy Roman Empire by the early 1400s. By the middle of the 15th century, they had reached England, Scandinavia, and the Iberian Peninsula. The speed is remarkable. In roughly 100 years, a people who had taken centuries to cross from India to the Balkans spread to every corner of Europe. And everywhere they went, Europe was confused by them. They had a look, a culture, a language that fit no known category. The guesses Europeans made say more about European geography than anything else. Bohemia, people called them Bohemians. Little Egypt, a place name that floated around medieval geography for a region in the Peloponnese, gave rise to the theory that they were Egyptians, which gave rise to the word gypsy, which is still in circulation today. Despite being wrong on every count, they were not from Egypt. They were not from Bohemia. They were from India. And the evidence was right there, in their mouths, the whole time. It just took 300 more years and a curious Hungarian student at a Dutch university to notice it. Here's where the story gets complicated. Romani is spoken today by somewhere between 5 and 12 million people. The range reflects how difficult it is to count a community that has historically faced severe pressure to conceal its identity. Most estimates cluster around 6 to 8 million speakers across Europe, with significant communities in Romania, Bulgaria, Spain, Hungary, Slovakia, Turkey, and Brazil. That makes Romani one of the larger minority languages in Europe. Bigger than Welsh, bigger than Basque, bigger than Irish. But Romani has no state. No country takes it as its national language. No institution historically promoted it. For most of its existence in Europe, it was actively suppressed. In some countries, Roma was forbidden to speak their language, to practice their culture, to maintain their identity. The result is that Romani fragmented. Centuries of isolation, different contact languages, different pressures. The Romani spoke in Spain sounds different than the Romani spoken in Hungary, which sounds different from the Romani spoken in Turkey. Linguists classify these as dialects, but in some cases, they've diverged enough that mutual intelligibility is limited. The underlying Sanskrit structure is still there, and a core vocabulary is still shared. But the surface has been shaped by wherever the speakers happened to be. Welsh has a government promoting it. Basque has the Basque country. Irish has Ireland. Romani has nothing equivalent. And for much of its history in Europe, it had the opposite. Active erasure. There is no standard written Romani. Different communities use different writing systems, Latin, Cyrillic, when they write at all. Oral tradition has carried the language in ways that written tradition couldn't, because the Roma were rarely in a position to build the institutions that written traditions require. This is a language that survived a millennium of migration, multiple empires, dozens of contact languages, and centuries of hostility, entirely on the strength of people choosing to speak it to each other. That's a different kind of durability than French, which had Versailles, a different kind of Arabic, which had the Quran. Romani survived on nothing but community. This part of the story has to be said directly. During the Second World War, the Roma were targeted by the Nazi regime for systematic extermination. The Holocaust of the Roma, the Porajmos, meaning the devouring in some Romani dialects, killed between 250,000 and 500,000 people. The range exists because the Roma were so inadequately documented in official records that precise numbers are still contested by historians. Up to 70 or 80% of the Roma population in some European countries was killed. Entire communities, entire dialect chains. Knowledge that had been transmitted orally for generations, from grandparents to grandchildren, was cut off. The Romani language survived, but the number of people who could have been speaking it today, the songs that would have existed, the stories that would have been told, the losses there are beyond calculation. The Roma received far less recognition in a post-war memory than other victims. Their genocide was not formally acknowledged by West Germany until 1982. Several European countries only acknowledged it decades later. The Porajmos remains one of the least discussed chapters of the Holocaust in mainstream education. This isn't incidental to the language story. When a community is persecuted, documentation disappears. Speakers disappear. The suppression of a people and the suppression of their language are not separate things. They are the same thing. So here is what the Romani language actually is. It's a branch of Sanskrit that walked out of India around 1,000 years ago, picked up Persian, Armenian, and Byzantine Greek along the way, arrived in Europe, speaking something no European could place, survived 5 centuries of official hostility and social marginalization, nearly disappeared in the 20th century's worst atrocity, and is still spoken today by millions of people across 3 continents. It is one of the most documented long-distance migrations in linguistic history, documented not by historians at the time, because nobody was writing it down, but by the language itself, which carried the evidence forward in its grammar, its core vocabulary, and its loanword layers like sediment and rock. No state, no institution, no official promotion. One of the most remarkable survival stories in the history of any language on Earth. And the next time someone tells you languages are just tools for communication, just practical instruments that rise and fall on usefulness, think about Romani, a language that was actively suppressed in country after country for centuries, a language whose speakers had every structural disadvantage, a language that is still here. Languages survive when communities decide they're worth keeping. That's the only reason Romani exists today. And it turns out that reason is enough. If this story made you want to go deeper into the Indo-European family, into Hindi, into any of the languages Romani is related to, Airlearn is built for that. Contextual, practical, built to stick. Links in the description. See you in the next one.